The unbroken chain. The stars looked different when you knew they belonged to someone else. Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the viewport of the Earth vessel New Dawn, watching the alien fleet surround her ship like predators circling wounded prey. 3 massive vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, hung in the void with the casual confidence of apex predators. Their hulls gleamed with an organic quality that made Elena's skin crawl, as if the ships were alive and watching her. "Captain, they're requesting immediate surrender," reported Communications Officer Sarah Park, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "They say we violated something called the sacred boundary." Elena turned from the viewport to face her bridge crew. 12 of Earth's best and brightest, hand-picked for humanity's first deep space exploration mission. They had been searching for new worlds, new resources, new possibilities for a growing human population. Instead, they had found something that might end humanity's expansion before it truly began. "Tom, what's our tactical situation?" Elena asked her chief engineer. Tom Bradley shook his gray head grimly. "Not good, Elena. Their ships are putting out energy readings that make our fusion cores look like birthday candles. We couldn't run if we wanted to, and fighting would be suicide." Through the communications array came a voice that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull itself. The universal translator struggled with concepts that had no human equivalent, but the meaning was clear enough. "Vessel of the species designated human, you have transgressed upon the domain of the Zephyrian Empire. By ancient law and sacred tradition, your people must now prove their worthiness to exist within our sphere of influence. You will accompany us to the Judgment Sphere, where your species will face the chain of dominion." Elena felt her blood run cold. "Can you clarify what that means?" "Your strongest warrior will face Krelthak, chainbreaker of the Empire, undefeated in 847 consecutive challenges. Should your champion prevail, humanity will be granted passage rights and basic trading privileges. Should your champion fail, your species will be marked as unworthy, and your expansion into this sector will be permanently forbidden." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Elena looked around at her crew, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They were explorers, scientists, engineers. The closest thing they had to a soldier was their security chief, Lieutenant Morrison, and he was trained for shipboard emergencies, not alien gladiatorial combat. "And if we refuse to participate?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Refusal is considered an admission of unworthiness. The result would be the same." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of her species' future settling on her shoulders. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. "We accept your invitation, but we request time to choose our champion. You have until we reach the Judgment Sphere. Prepare yourselves, humans. You are about to witness the power that has kept the galaxy in order for 3 centuries." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Elena watched through the viewport as the alien ships began moving, their organic curves cutting through space with unsettling grace. The New Dawn was caught in some kind of tractor field, pulled along like a leaf in a cosmic current. "Captain," Dr. Marcus Chen spoke up from his position at the science station. Elena had almost forgotten he was there. The xenoarchaeologist was quiet by nature, spending most of his time studying alien artifacts in his lab rather than participating in bridge operations. "I've been analyzing their ship configurations and energy signatures. This isn't a recent development." Elena moved to look over his shoulder at the data scrolling across his screen. Dr. Chen was a thin man in his early 40s, with prematurely gray hair and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to see more than they revealed. He had joined the mission as a specialist in alien cultures, hoping to study any ruins or artifacts they might discover. Elena had never imagined they would encounter living aliens, let alone hostile ones. "What do you mean?" she asked. Chen pointed to the scan results. "These ships show signs of centuries of use, but they're maintained to perfection. The energy patterns suggest they've been using the same technology for a very long time. This isn't expansion or conquest in the traditional sense. This is maintenance of an existing order." Tom Bradley joined them at the science station. "You're saying they've been doing this for a while?" "More than a while," Chen replied, his fingers dancing across the controls to bring up comparative analyses. "If I'm reading these patterns correctly, the Zephyrian Empire has been using this chain of dominion system to control expansion in this sector for centuries. They're not conquerors, they're gatekeepers." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "How many species do you think they've faced?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the data. Based on the wear patterns on their ships and the confidence in their approach, hundreds, maybe thousands. And they've won every time? 847 consecutive victories, Chen said softly. That's what they said. The journey to the Judgment Sphere took 6 hours. During that time, Elena and her crew worked frantically to understand what they were facing and to find some way to give humanity a fighting chance. The ship's computer analyzed every scrap of data about the Zephyrians, building psychological profiles and tactical assessments. What they learned was not encouraging. The Zephyrians appeared to be a species that had perfected biological enhancement. Their warriors underwent extensive genetic and cybernetic modifications, turning them into living weapons optimized for combat. Krelthak, their current champion, was described in intercepted communications as the pinnacle of their enhancement technology. He's not just a warrior, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's xenobiologist, as she presented her analysis to Elena's senior staff. Based on the data we've gathered, Krelthak has been modified at the cellular level. Enhanced strength, speed, reflexes, even pain tolerance. He's essentially a biological weapon designed for single combat. Elena looked around the conference table at her department heads. Options? We could try to modify our weapons, suggested Lieutenant Morrison. Maybe give our champion some kind of technological advantage. Unlikely to work, Tom Bradley replied. Their scans of our ship would have detected any advanced weapons. If they're allowing this challenge to proceed, they're confident our technology won't make a difference. Dr. Kim consulted her tablet. There's another problem. Based on their physiology, Krelthak likely has significant advantages in strength and endurance over any human. We're not just facing a trained fighter, we're facing a genetically superior opponent. Elena felt the weight of despair settling over the room. They were scientists and explorers, not warriors. Even their security personnel were trained for peacekeeping and emergency response, not mortal combat against alien super soldiers. Captain, Dr. Chen spoke up quietly from the end of the table. There might be another way to look at this. All eyes turned to the xenoarchaeologist. Elena had noticed that Chen had been unusually quiet during the briefing, studying the data with an intensity that seemed personal rather than professional. The Zephyrians have been using this system for centuries, Chen continued. They've perfected it, optimized it, made it into a ritual, but that also means they've become predictable. They expect certain types of opponents, certain approaches to combat. Lieutenant Morrison leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Doctor? Chen was quiet for a moment, his eyes focused on something beyond the conference room walls. I'm suggesting that sometimes the best way to win isn't to be stronger or faster. Sometimes it's to be something they've never seen before. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the ship's communication system activated. Human vessel, prepare for arrival at the Judgment Sphere. Your champion will face Krelthak in 1 hour. Elena looked around the table one more time. We need a volunteer, someone willing to represent our entire species in single combat against an opponent who has never lost. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Elena wasn't surprised. Asking someone to essentially commit suicide for the slim chance of saving humanity's expansion was an impossible request. I'll do it. The voice was quiet but firm. Elena turned to see Dr. Chen standing up from his chair, his face calm but determined. Marcus, no, Elena said immediately. You're not trained for this. You're an archaeologist. Chen met her eyes with a steady gaze. I'm also the only person on this ship who has studied alien combat techniques. I know how they think, how they approach warfare, and sometimes, Captain, the person who understands the past is the best choice to shape the future. Elena wanted to argue, but she could see something in Chen's expression that stopped her. There was knowledge there, experience that she hadn't expected from the quiet scientist. Are you sure about this, Marcus? She asked softly. Chen nodded slowly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As the new dawn was drawn into the docking bay of the Judgment Sphere, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Marcus Chen was not quite who he appeared to be. But with humanity's future hanging in the balance, she had no choice but to trust him. The Judgment Sphere was unlike anything in human experience. The structure was vast, easily the size of a small moon, with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own life. As their shuttle approached the central arena complex, Elena could see through the transparent aluminum viewing ports that they were not alone. Dozens of other ships filled the docking bays, representing species from across the galaxy. All had come to witness what the Zephyrians promised would be another demonstration of their dominance. The arena itself was a marvel of engineering and intimidation. A circular chamber nearly a kilometer across, with seating for thousands of alien spectators rising in tiers toward a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond. The floor was covered in a substance that looked like crystallized sand, and energy barriers hummed with power around the perimeter. Elena and her crew were escorted to a designated area by Zephyrian guards, creatures that moved with fluid grace despite their imposing size. Each guard stood nearly 3 meters tall, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted color like liquid metal. They carried weapons that hummed with contained energy, but their movements suggested they hardly needed them. As they took their seats, Elena got her first look at the other species that had come to watch. Beings of every conceivable shape and size filled the arena, their conversations creating a buzz of anticipation in the recycled air. Some looked humanoid, others were so alien that Elena had trouble identifying which parts might be heads or limbs. "Impressive gathering," Tom Bradley murmured, his engineering mind clearly fascinated by the architecture around them. "They're all here to see us lose," Elena replied grimly. At the center of the arena, a raised platform began to glow with soft light. The conversations around them gradually died as attention focused on the platform. When the light faded, 2 figures stood there. The first was clearly Zephyrian, but unlike the guards. This one wore robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, and when it spoke, its voice carried easily across the vast space without technological amplification. "Beings of the galaxy," the robed figure announced. "I am High Arbiter Zondal. Today we witness the 848th challenge to the Chain of Dominion. The species known as human has violated our sacred boundaries and must now prove their worthiness through trial by combat." The second figure stepped forward, and Elena felt her heart sink. Krelthak was everything their analysis had suggested and more. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, the Zephyrian champion was a masterwork of biological enhancement. His skin had the appearance of living armor, dark blue-black plates that shifted and moved with each breath. His limbs were elongated but proportioned for maximum leverage and power. Most disturbing were his eyes, which glowed with an inner light that suggested enhanced perception far beyond normal ranges. Krelthak raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd's approval, and Elena could see the modifications to his hands. What had once been fingers were now articulated weapons, each digit capable of extending into razor-sharp claws or blunt striking surfaces. "For 3 centuries, High Arbiter Zondal continued, Krelthak has maintained the chain of dominion. No species has produced a warrior capable of matching his perfection. Today the humans will learn the price of challenging the natural order of the galaxy." Elena looked down at Dr. Chen, who sat quietly beside her, seemingly unaffected by the spectacle. He watched Krelthak with the same analytical attention he brought to studying ancient artifacts, as if the champion were just another puzzle to be solved. "Marcus," Elena whispered, "it's not too late to change our minds. We could try to negotiate, find another way." Chen turned to look at her, and for a moment Elena saw something flicker behind his calm exterior. Pain, maybe, or regret. "Captain," he said softly, "sometimes the only way forward is through. Trust me." Before Elena could respond, High Arbiter Zondal's voice boomed across the arena again. "Let the human champion present himself for judgment." Dr. Marcus Chen stood up slowly, straightening his simple civilian clothes. As he walked toward the arena floor, Elena noticed something she had missed before. Despite his academic appearance, Chen moved with the fluid economy of motion that came from years of physical training. His steps were measured, balanced, ready. For the first time since this nightmare began, Elena felt a flicker of hope. Dr. Marcus Chen might be more than he appeared to be. But as she watched Krelthak testing his enhanced limbs and saw the confidence in the champion's glowing eyes, she wondered if it would be enough. The chain of dominion had remained unbroken for 847 challenges. In a few minutes, humanity would learn whether their representative could do what no other species had managed in 3 centuries. The future of human expansion into the galaxy rested in the hands of a quiet archaeologist who might not be quite what he seemed. The archaeologist's secret. The arena floor felt different under Dr. Marcus Chen's feet than he had expected. The crystallized sand shifted slightly with each step, designed to challenge balance and footing. He had read about such surfaces in ancient texts, combat arenas from civilizations that had valued the art of war above all else. Now he was walking on one, and the irony was not lost on him. High Arbiter Zondel's voice echoed across the vast space as Chen made his way to the center platform. The human champion approaches. State your name and your qualifications for this sacred trial. Chen stopped at the designated position, looking small and fragile next to Krelthak's imposing form. The Zephyrian champion studied him with glowing eyes, and Chen could see confusion in that alien gaze. Krelthak had expected a warrior, someone who moved with military bearing and radiated aggression. Instead, he faced a middle-aged academic who looked like he would be more comfortable in a library than a combat arena. "My name is Marcus Chen," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the arena's acoustic design. "I am a xenoarchaeologist of the Terran Federation, and I accept this challenge on behalf of my species." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the alien spectators. Chen could hear fragments of conversation in languages the universal translator couldn't quite parse, but the tone was clear enough. Amusement. Disbelief. Some species were already placing bets on how quickly the fight would end. Krelthak leaned forward slightly, his enhanced vocal cords producing sounds that the translator rendered as words. "Human, you are either very brave or very foolish. I have faced the strongest warriors from hundreds of species, champions who trained their entire lives for combat. What makes you believe you can succeed where they have failed?" Chen looked up at the towering figure before him, noting the way Krelthak's bio-armor shifted and adjusted with each movement. The Zephyrian was a masterwork of enhancement technology, but Chen could see the patterns in his construction, everything optimized for a specific type of combat, refined over centuries of victories. "Because," Chen said quietly, "I've spent my career studying the ruins of civilizations that thought they were unbeatable." In the viewing area, Captain Elena Vasquez felt her hands grip the armrests of her chair so tightly her knuckles went white. She watched Dr. Chen standing calmly in the arena and tried to reconcile what she was seeing with what she knew about the man. Chen had been part of her crew for 8 months, and in all that time, he had been nothing but a dedicated scientist. Quiet, thoughtful, more interested in ancient pottery shards than anything remotely violent. But now, watching him face down an alien super warrior without a trace of fear, Elena began to wonder how well she really knew Dr. Marcus Chen. "Tom," she whispered to Chief Engineer Bradley, who sat beside her, "pull up Chen's personnel file, everything we have." Bradley's fingers moved quickly over his portable tablet, accessing the ship's database. "Elena, his file is pretty standard. PhD in xenoarchaeology from Cambridge, specialization in pre-contact civilizations, published extensively on ancient warfare techniques. Before joining our mission, he spent 5 years leading excavations on Proxima Centauri b." Elena frowned. "What about before his academic career? Military service, training, anything like that?" Bradley scrolled through the file, then paused. "That's odd. There's a gap here. 10 years between his undergraduate degree and when he started his PhD program. The file just says classified government service with a reference number I don't have clearance for." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Classified government service during that time period could mean only one thing. Chen had been part of Earth's early defense initiatives, back when humanity was still paranoid about potential alien contact. The programs from that era were so classified that even ship captains didn't have access to the records. On the arena floor, High Arbiter Zondal began reciting the formal terms of combat. "The challenge will be conducted according to ancient tradition. No weapons save those granted by nature or enhancement. Combat continues until one participant yields, is rendered unconscious, or dies. The victor species gains the rights previously stated." Chen nodded his understanding, then did something that surprised everyone in the arena. He sat down cross-legged on the crystallized sand and closed his eyes. Krelthak's head tilted in confusion. "Human, the challenge has begun. Why do you not prepare for combat?" Chen's eyes remained closed, his breathing slow and steady. "I am preparing, just not in the way you expect." What the arena spectators couldn't see was the transformation taking place inside Marcus Chen's mind. For 15 years, he had worked to bury the memories, to forget the skills that had once defined him. He had become an archaeologist because he wanted to study the dead past, not create new corpses. But now, with humanity's future hanging in the balance, he had no choice but to remember who he used to be. The memories came flooding back like a dam bursting. Kepler Station, 18 years ago. Lieutenant Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force, part of a classified unit called the Cultural Analysis Division. Their mission was to study potential alien threats and develop countermeasures based on xenopsychological profiles. Chen had been one of their best operatives, trained not just in combat, but in the deeper understanding of how different species approached warfare. The Kepler incident. Even now, the memory made Chen's hands shake slightly. First contact with a hostile alien species called the Vector. The Earth Defense Force had tried to negotiate, but the Vector saw negotiation as weakness. They had taken hostages, including Chen's research team. Chen had been forced to choose between following orders and saving innocent lives. He had chosen the lives. What followed was 18 hours of combat in the underground tunnels of Kepler Station. Chen against 12 Vector warriors, using every technique he had learned and some he invented on the spot. When it was over, the hostages were safe, but Chen was forever changed. He had discovered something about himself that terrified him. He was very, very good at killing. The psychological evaluations after Kepler had been brutal. Chen had been diagnosed with severe combat trauma, but also with something else. The evaluators called it hyperadaptive combat syndrome. His mind had evolved during those 18 hours, developing an almost supernatural ability to read opponents and predict their movements. Earth Defense Force had wanted to study him, to turn him into a weapon. Instead, Chen had walked away. He had legally changed his identity, erased his military records, and spent 10 years in therapy before finally emerging as Dr. Marcus Chen, archaeologist. He had thought he could leave the warrior behind and become something peaceful, but warriors, Chen had learned, were never really retired. They were just waiting for the next war. Chen opened his eyes and stood up smoothly. The memories were fully integrated now, 15 years of suppressed training and instinct flowing back into his consciousness. He looked at Krelthak with new eyes, seeing not an unbeatable champion, but a puzzle to be solved. "I'm ready now," Chen said. Krelthak's confusion was evident in his body language. "Human, you have sat in meditation while I prepare for combat. This shows either great confidence or great stupidity." Chen began walking slowly around the Zephyrian champion, his movements now fluid and purposeful. "Tell me, Krelthak, in your 847 victories, how many of your opponents studied you before they fought?" "Studied me?" Krelthak's claws extended slightly, an automatic response to perceived threat. "They attempted to analyze my capabilities, yes. All warriors do this." "No," Chen continued his slow circle. "I mean really studied you. Your enhancement patterns, your movement preferences, your psychological tells. How many of your opponents were archaeologists?" Krelthak's glowing eyes tracked Chen's movement, but the champion seemed uncertain how to respond to this strange behavior. "None. What does ancient history have to do with combat?" Chen smiled, and for the first time since entering the arena, he looked dangerous. "Everything. You see, Krelthak, I've spent my career studying dead civilizations, empires that thought they were unbeatable, warriors who believed they were perfect. And do you know what I learned from all those ruins?" Chen stopped directly in front of the champion, looking up at the towering figure without fear. "Nothing lasts forever. Every system has flaws. Every champion falls eventually. The trick is finding the right pressure point." Krelthak's patience finally broke. With a roar that shook the arena, he launched himself at Chen, his enhanced speed carrying him forward in a blur of motion. His claws swept through the air where Chen had been standing, but the human was no longer there. Chen had moved at the last possible second, not with superhuman speed but with perfect timing. He rolled to the side and came up behind Krelthak as the champion's momentum carried him past. But instead of attacking, Chen simply resumed his slow circle. "First observation," Chen said conversationally, as if he weren't in mortal combat. "Your enhancements optimize for forward momentum and striking power. Your recovery time after a missed attack is approximately 1.3 seconds. Krelthak spun around, his confusion now mixed with anger. "Stand still and fight, human." "Second observation," Chen continued, still circling. "Your bio-armor provides excellent protection against kinetic impacts, but shows stress fractures at the joint connections. Probably a necessary trade-off between mobility and defense." This time, Krelthak's attack was more controlled, a series of calculated strikes designed to corner Chen and prevent his evasion. But Chen seemed to anticipate each move, slipping past the claws with minimal movement and maximum efficiency. In the viewing area, the alien spectators had gone silent. What they were witnessing didn't match any combat pattern they had seen before. The human wasn't fighting back in any conventional sense, but he was clearly controlling the pace and flow of the encounter. Captain Elena Vasquez leaned forward in her seat, her heart pounding. "What is he doing?" Chief Engineer Bradley was studying the action through his tablet's enhanced optics. "Elena, look at the pattern. Chen isn't just avoiding attacks. He's learning. Every exchange gives him more information about Krelthak's capabilities." On the arena floor, Chen continued his tactical analysis while avoiding increasingly desperate attacks from the Zephyrian champion. Third observation. Your enhanced reflexes are impressive, but they're programmed responses. You've trained against opponents who follow conventional combat doctrine. Krelthak managed to clip Chen's shoulder with one claw, drawing first blood. The human stumbled but recovered quickly, and Chen noted that the injury was precisely what he had expected. Shallow, designed to weaken rather than kill. Even Krelthak's enhanced instincts were following patterns. Fourth observation, Chen said, his voice now carrying a harder edge. You've never fought someone who treats combat as applied archaeology. Chen suddenly changed tactics. Instead of continuing his evasive pattern, he moved directly toward Krelthak. The champion, expecting another dodge, committed to a powerful downward strike that would have crushed a normal human. Chen stepped inside the attack's arc and struck Krelthak's wrist with surgical precision. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it targeted a specific nerve cluster where the bio-armor was thinnest. Krelthak's right hand went numb instantly, his claws retracting involuntarily. "Pressure point analysis," Chen explained, as Krelthak stared at his useless hand in shock. "I've studied the physiology of hundreds of species. Enhancement technology follows biological principles, which means it follows patterns." For the first time in 847 challenges, Krelthak felt something he had never experienced in combat. Uncertainty. This small human had just done something that should have been impossible. He had found a weakness in the perfect enhancement that had made Krelthak unbeatable. "What are you?" Krelthak demanded, cradling his disabled hand. Chen's expression was calm, but his eyes held depths that hadn't been there when he first entered the arena. "I'm someone who learned a long time ago that the deadliest weapon isn't strength or speed. It's the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect the people you care about." Chen moved again, this time with purpose instead of evasion. His hands found pressure points and nerve clusters with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a soldier. Each strike was calculated to disable rather than destroy, but the cumulative effect was devastating. Krelthak fought back desperately, his remaining functional limbs lashing out with enhanced speed and power. But Chen had completed his analysis now. He knew exactly how the champion would move, where the bio-armor was vulnerable, and how to turn Krelthak's enhancements against him. The end came suddenly. Chen slipped past Krelthak's guard one final time and struck a nerve cluster at the base of the champion's neck. The effect was immediate and complete. Krelthak's enhanced nervous system, pushed beyond its design parameters by Chen's precise attacks, simply shut down. The mighty champion collapsed to the crystallized sand, conscious but completely paralyzed. The arena was silent except for the sound of Chen's breathing. He stood over the fallen champion, looking down with something that might have been regret. "I'm sorry," Chen said quietly, his words meant for Krelthak alone. "I know what it's like to discover you're not who you thought you were." High Arbiter Zondal's voice broke the silence, carrying a note of shock that transcended species barriers. "The challenge is complete. The human champion is victorious. The chain of dominion is broken." Chen walked slowly back toward the viewing area where his crewmates waited. With each step he could feel the weight of what he had done settling on his shoulders. He had saved humanity's future, but he had also revealed the monster that still lived inside him. Captain Elena Vasquez met him at the arena's edge, her expression a mixture of relief, gratitude, and new wariness. "Marcus, who are you really?" Chen looked at her with tired eyes. "Someone who thought he could bury the past. But sometimes, Captain, the past is exactly what you need to build a future." As the alien spectators began to file out of the arena, many casting nervous glances at the small human who had done the impossible, Chen wondered if he had saved humanity or simply revealed to the galaxy that humans were something to be feared. Either way, the chain of dominion was broken, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Breaking the chain. The silence in the arena stretched for what felt like eternity. Thousands of alien beings sat motionless in their seats, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The impossible had happened. The chain of dominion, unbroken for 3 centuries, lay shattered in the crystallized sand of the arena floor. Dr. Marcus Chen stood quietly beside the fallen form of Krelthok, his shoulders bearing the weight of more than just physical exhaustion. Around him, the very air seemed to thrum with tension as the implications of his victory rippled outward through the gathered representatives of dozens of species. High Arbiter Zondal descended from the elevated platform, moving with the fluid grace characteristic of his species, but Chen could see uncertainty in every step. The Zephyrian leader approached the 2 combatants, his robes shifting color in patterns that Chen's xenoarchaeological training told him indicated deep emotional disturbance. "This is unprecedented," Zondal said, his voice carrying none of its earlier authority. "In 847 challenges, no champion has fallen to Krelthok. The enhancement protocols were perfected over centuries. How did you accomplish this?" Chen knelt beside the paralyzed champion, checking the nerve points he had targeted. Krelthak's eyes tracked his movement, consciousness intact, but body unresponsive. "The paralysis is temporary," Chen said quietly. "Full function should return within 6 hours. There will be no permanent damage." "That was not my question, human." Chen stood slowly, turning to face the High Arbiter. "You asked how I accomplished this. The answer is simple. I treated it as a problem to be solved rather than a battle to be won." Zondal's head tilted in the gesture Chen recognized as confusion among Zephyrians. "Explain. Your enhancement technology is remarkable," Chen began, his voice carrying clearly in the arena's acoustics. "But it follows principles. Biological systems, even enhanced ones, have patterns, limitations, pressure points. Krelthok wasn't unbeatable because he was perfect. He was unbeatable because no one had ever approached the problem systematically." Captain Elena Vasquez and her crew had made their way down to the arena floor, escorted by nervous Zephyrian guards. Elena could see the change in Chen clearly now. The quiet archaeologist was still there, but underneath was something harder, more dangerous. She wondered how she had missed the signs. "Marcus," Elena said as she approached, "the medical scanner Tom brought shows significant stress fractures in Krelthak's enhancement matrix. How did you know where to strike?" Chen looked at his captain, and Elena saw something in his eyes that made her step back involuntarily. Not hostility, but a depth of knowledge about violence that belonged to someone very different from the man she thought she knew. "Because I've made a career of studying how things break," Chen said simply. High Arbiter Zondal raised one elongated hand, and the arena's energy field shimmered into visibility around them. "Before we proceed with the traditional rites of victory, I must understand the implications of what has occurred. Human, are you representative of your species' capabilities?" Chen considered the question carefully. Around the arena he could see alien dignitaries leaning forward to hear his answer. The wrong response could paint humanity as either weak or as an existential threat. Both options carried dangerous consequences. "Every human is different," Chen finally said, "but we all share certain characteristics. We adapt, we learn, we find ways to solve problems that others consider unsolvable. What you saw here today wasn't superhuman ability. It was human nature applied to an impossible situation." A new voice entered the conversation, coming from one of the viewing areas. A massive creature that looked like it was built from living stone descended to the arena floor with earth-shaking steps. Chen's training identified it as a Korthan, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. "Human," the Korthan rumbled, its voice like grinding mountains. "I am Elder Basalt of the Korthan Collective. I have witnessed 37 challenges too. The chain of dominion. What concerns us is not what you did, but how you did it. You fought without emotion, without the passion that drives most warriors. This suggests a species that has weaponized intellect itself." Chen met the Elder's massive stone-carved gaze. "With respect, Elder Basalt, humans didn't weaponize intellect. We weaponized necessity. When survival is at stake, we become whatever we need to become." The implications of Chen's words rippled through the gathered aliens like a shockwave. Species that had built their understanding of the galaxy around the assumption of Zephyrian dominance suddenly faced the reality that the balance of power had fundamentally shifted. A smaller figure emerged from the crowd of observers, moving with the quick, bird-like motions of the Quillic species. "Human Chen," it chirped through its translator. "The Quillic Confederation has a question. If one human can defeat the enhanced champion of the Zephyrians, what could a human military force accomplish?" Chen felt the weight of the question and the dangerous territory it represented. The same thing any military force accomplishes when it's fighting for something worth protecting. The difference isn't in our capabilities. It's in our motivations. Dr. Sarah Kim had been quietly scanning the arena with her biological sensors, and now she approached Chen with a troubled expression. Marcus, I'm picking up elevated stress hormones from most of the alien observers. They're not just surprised by your victory. They're afraid. Chen nodded grimly. He had expected this reaction. Fear was often the natural response when established assumptions about power and safety were suddenly overturned. High Arbiter Zondal consulted with several other Zephyrian officials, their rapid color-shifting communication too complex for the universal translators to interpret. When the conference ended, Zondal approached Chen with obvious reluctance. Dr. Chen, by right of victory, humanity has earned passage rights through Zephyrian space and basic trading privileges. However, the Council of Arbiters has additional concerns. Your victory method has implications that extend beyond our traditional framework. Elena stepped forward, reasserting her role as the human diplomatic representative. What kind of implications, High Arbiter? The chain of dominion has maintained galactic stability for centuries. Species that cannot defeat our champion are restricted to limited expansion, preventing conflicts over resources and territory. But your victory demonstrates capabilities that could destabilize the entire system. Chen understood immediately. You're worried that other species will see humanity as a threat and take preemptive action. Or worse, rumbled Elder Basalt. They may decide that the only way to ensure their own security is to eliminate humanity before you can expand further. The arena had become a diplomatic chamber, with representatives from dozens of species gathering around the humans to assess this new variable in galactic politics. Chen could see the calculations happening behind alien eyes, the reassessment of threat levels and strategic priorities. A delegation of crystalline beings that Chen identified as Luxari approached with their characteristic musical chiming. Their translator rendered their harmonic speech as words. The Luxari resonance suggests a solution. Rather than allowing fear to drive policy, perhaps humanity could demonstrate their intentions through actions. What kind of actions? Elena asked. Peaceful ones, the lead Luxari replied. Your species has shown it can break our strongest chains. Show us now that you choose not to use that power for conquest. Chen felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. The galaxy was watching humanity's first steps onto the galactic stage, and their future would be shaped by what happened in the next few minutes. May I suggest a different approach? Chen said, addressing the gathered alien representatives. The chain of dominion worked because it provided predictability. Everyone knew the rules and everyone knew their place. But it was also limiting. How many species never reached their full potential because they were restricted by a system designed to maintain the status quo? High Arbiter Zondal's robes shifted to colors that Chen interpreted as curiosity mixed with concern. What are you proposing, human? I'm proposing that instead of maintaining dominance through combat, we create something new, a system based on cooperation rather than conquest. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it, learn from it, contribute to it. The Quillic representative chirped excitedly. A cooperative framework could allow for rapid technological and cultural exchange. The potential benefits are enormous. But so are the risks, Elder Basalt pointed out. Cooperation requires trust. Trust requires understanding. How can we understand a species that can produce warriors like you? Chen looked around at the assembled aliens, seeing fear, curiosity, and hope in equal measure. By recognizing that I'm not just a warrior, I'm an archaeologist who was forced to remember a part of himself he'd tried to forget. Humans aren't naturally violent. We're naturally adaptive. We become what we need to become to protect the things we love. On the arena floor, Krelthak had begun to show signs of recovery. His fingers twitched as nerve function slowly returned. Chen knelt beside the fallen champion again, offering what comfort he could. How do you feel? Chen asked quietly. Krelthak's eyes focused on him with difficulty. Confused, defeated, but also curious. You could have killed me easily, why didn't you? Chen helped the Zephyrian champion into a sitting position as strength returned to his limbs. Because defeating you was never the goal. Protecting my people was the goal. Killing you wouldn't have made them any safer. But I was created to be unbeatable. Krelthak said, his voice carrying a note of existential uncertainty. If I can be defeated, what am I? Chen considered the question carefully. You're someone who did his duty for 3 centuries. Someone who maintained order and stability when the galaxy needed it. Just because that job is ending doesn't mean your value is ending. High Arbiter Zondal had been listening to this exchange, and now he approached with what Chen interpreted as newfound respect. Dr. Chen, your proposal for a cooperative framework has merit, but implementation would require unprecedented changes to systems that have existed for millennia. All meaningful change starts with someone willing to take the first step, Chen replied. Humanity is willing to be that someone, but we can't do it alone. Captain Elena Vasquez activated her communicator, establishing contact with Earth Command. Admiral Morrison, this is Captain Vasquez. The challenge has been completed successfully. Dr. Chen defeated the Zephyrian champion and we've been granted passage rights. But sir, the situation has evolved beyond our original mission parameters. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the communicator. Explain, Captain. Elena looked around at the gathered alien representatives, all waiting to hear humanity's next move. Sir, we have an opportunity to fundamentally change human relationships with galactic civilization, but it's going to require resources, diplomatic personnel, and a commitment to long-term cooperation that goes far beyond exploration missions. And the risks, Captain? Elena met Chen's eyes, seeing both the warrior and the scholar in his expression. The risks are substantial, Admiral, but so are the opportunities. Dr. Chen has shown the galaxy that humanity cannot be ignored or dismissed. Now we have to decide what we want to do with that attention. Over the next several hours, the arena became an impromptu diplomatic conference. Representatives from major galactic powers worked with Elena and her crew to draft the framework for what would eventually become known as the Cooperative Accords. The agreement established new principles for galactic relations based on mutual benefit rather than dominance hierarchies. Chen found himself in the unique position of being both humanity's representative and a symbol of their capabilities. Species that had never considered humans significant now sought meetings and alliances. Others maintained careful distance, uncertain whether humanity represented opportunity or threat. As the formal ceremonies concluded and the various delegations prepared to depart, Chen stood alone in the arena where it had all begun. The crystallized sand still showed scuff marks from his fight with Krelthak, evidence of the moment when everything changed. Elena approached him, her expression mixing gratitude with lingering questions. Marcus, I know you've answered this before, but I need to understand. Who were you before you became Dr. Chen? Chen looked up at the transparent dome showing the stars beyond, each one representing worlds and possibilities that humanity might now explore freely. I was someone who learned that the most dangerous thing about humans isn't our capacity for violence, it's our capacity for sacrifice. When we believe in something strongly enough, we'll become whatever we need to become to protect it. And what do you believe in now? Chen smiled, and for the first time since the fight, it reached his eyes. I believe in the future we just made possible. I believe in species learning from each other instead of conquering each other. I believe that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to make sure the next generation doesn't have to fight at all. 6 months later, the first joint human-alien research expedition departed from the Judgment Sphere, now renamed the Cooperation Station. Dr. Marcus Chen led the archaeological team, working alongside Zephyrian enhancement specialists, Quillic linguists, and Corthan engineers to study ancient ruins that might hold clues to the galaxy's past. Krelthak had volunteered for the security detail, his experience as a champion now channeled toward protecting researchers rather than maintaining dominance. The former enemies had become unlikely friends, united by their shared understanding of what it meant to redefine themselves. The chain of dominion was broken, but in its place, something better had begun to grow. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as partners in building a future where strength served cooperation rather than domination. And in the ruins of ancient civilizations, Dr. Marcus Chen continued his real work, studying the past to ensure that the future would be different, better, more hopeful than anything the galaxy had seen before. The archaeologist had found peace with the warrior, and together, they were helping to build a new chapter in the story of galactic civilization.